United Bank of Africa PLC has announced its audited results for the full year ended December 2019, recording some strong earnings growth. The bank's gross earnings grew by 13.3% to nearly 560 billion naira, compared to 494 billion in the previous period, 2018. First time the bank's gross earnings and assets will respectively cross the 500 billion naira mark. In the studio, joining me for an in-depth analysis of UBA's financial statement is Arise Business Analyst Chika Mbonu. You're welcome, sir.
Good morning.
Great to have you. Great to have you. So yes, let us now discuss these figures for UBA. What are we seeing? I mean, 13% earnings growth. However, inflation is at 12%. So how do you square the two?
Okay, let me put some perspective.
Yes, please.
You know, with the tagline of African Global Bank,
yes,
UBA has become one of the biggest banks in Africa, with presence in US, UK, and then France, and then in 20 African countries. They have represented Nigeria very well. A Pan-African bank, in so many countries in Africa.
Yes.
A lot of countries in Africa. Once you step out from the airports, you just see UBA, signboards. In
yes.
Congo, DR. In Gabon, they are there. In Burkina Faso, in Mali, in Chad. Name them. They are there. As already said, this is an interesting year for UBA.
Yes.
There were two major milestones for them. Their gross earnings crossed the 500 billion mark for the first time.
Yes, indeed.
In the year.
Yes,
a growth of about 13%. It also, as well as when we go down, you'll find also that the total assets, for the first time also, has crossed the 5 trillion naira mark. So there are two major milestones for UBA in this period.
Okay.
So we already said gross earnings grew by 13%, driven principally by the growth in net interest income of about 8%. You'll find that 8% is very good, if considering the fact that when we looked at Zenith, another top 5 bank,
yes,
a few days ago,
yes,
the net interest income was actually fell. Because, as I said before, during the year, the asset streams for banks in Nigeria, principally the fixed income instruments,
yes,
and then, of course, loan assets, the prices were falling. Whereas the cost of funds barely remained the same, so they couldn't maximize that. So this was very good for them.
Okay.
But interestingly, you can look at the growth in their gross earnings, so driven principally by the non-interest income growth of about 21%. Again, just like Zenith,
exactly.
This again
the same
came from the electronic banking income in this they grew by more than 38%. So the massive growth in their electronic banking income.
Okay.
Considering inflation, they held operating expenses grew by 10%. But one other line there, you would have expected. You see, profit before tax grew by mere 4%.
4%, yes.
Even though gross earnings grew by 13%, principally because of the growth in the operating expenses. And one other line that is not here, which is the loan expense. The loan expense for this UBA for this period grew by more than 300%. From about 4.5 billion in the previous year, 2018, it grew to about 19 billion in 2019. So not surprising, therefore, that you have the growth of 4% in their profit before tax.
Okay.
Let's move swiftly to their balance sheet.
Okay.
The balance sheet. One of the major issues there is the element there is the customer deposit. It gives you impression of how customers outside they receive the brand.
Okay.
And so do they patronize the brand? And so put their money there. So for UBA, you notice that the customer deposit grew by 14%.
Okay.
On the back of that, again, you can see the loan book grew by 20%. Do you recall what happened in the year, the LDR? You'll find also that Zenith Bank, loan book grew by about the same percent. Okay. Zenith Bank actually grew by about 22%. So no surprise that UBA grew by about 20%.
Okay.
So in all, that led to the growth of 15% in their total assets. And as I said before, the total assets crossed the 5 trillion mark for the first time this year. But quickly.
Yes.
Size is good, as I always say. But what do you do with your size?
Africa, yes.
Let's look at some the ratios for UBA. One of the most important ratios for the banks is the return on average equity.
Okay.
Basically, it says if an investor gives you 100 naira at the beginning of the year,
how much do they get
at the end of the year?
Right.
You can say UBA came in here at about 16.2 naira, almost flat for the 2 years, 1% growth. Now you can look at this also there. The other ratio that's critical there is cost to income ratio.
Very important.
Basically, it says For every 100 naira the bank earns, how much does it spend to earn it?
Cost, yes.
This is about, I would spend about 63 naira, 62.7 naira here. Last year, it was about 63. So just a little moderation on that.
But good, decent cost management.
Yeah, cost of funds, again, for the bank is about 4%. Do recall when we did Zenith, it was about 3%.
Right.
The other ratios, the other important ratio, okay, I know you like that, is the MPL. The non-performing loans.
Because I was about to ask you, as loan book is growing.
As loan book is growing, what's going to happen to the MPL? The MPL came in at 5.3%.
Okay.
This is for the group. For the Nigerian bank, it's about 2.5%. Okay. UBA is very, they're very austere in their risk management processes. Okay. They manage the loan process very well. So the loan books are the MPL is not usually very low. So for the group, it's 5.3%. Still above the CBN threshold of 5%. The other ratios, liquidity ratios, and capital adequacy ratio are above the statutory minimum for the banks in Nigeria. So overall, you will see UBA this year has been good. 2019 has been good for them. Yes. Considering the environment that the banks operated, correct. Hostile environment still, and then you find that the net interest income was struggled. Right. And then of course the growth was driven by the fees and commission line. So how would you say they're doing compared to the other? I mean, I know we looked at Zenith last week, but compared to other players, how would you say that they're performing? Usually, we like comparing the 5 top banks in Nigeria, only but as of now, just UBA and Zenith that pulled out their results. On gross earnings, Zenith came in about 62 billion, whereas UBA came in about 560 billion. Just about the same size, not too much difference. Total asset, UBA came in at 5.36 trillion. And then Zenith came out about 6.3 trillion, about 1 trillion, about 500 billion above that. Okay. Customer deposit, which is very important. Zenith came in about 4.2 trillion, and then UBA came in at 3.8 trillion. But one of the important ratios we have here is two ratios I want to look at. At the return cost-to-income ratio, and this is where UBA has to look at. Zenith came in at 48.8 naira, which means that for every 100 naira that Zenith earns, he spent about 48.8 naira to earn it. Okay. Now watch this. Yeah. For every 100 naira UBA earns, he spent about 62 naira. So it's higher. It's higher. So UBA has to. They have to look at that. But they have been using technology to drive their business. The other thing that's important here is the return on equity. For the shareholders, it's interesting. If we give you this money, how much they return to us? Right. Zenith, for every 100 naira investors give to Zenith, they return about 24 naira. Okay. Whereas UBA, they return about 16 naira. So again, you see that the difference. Right. As more results come in for the banks, we'll be able to compare. We'll have all the banks here. Yeah. Okay, so what about their main growth strategy? As you look at the growth strategy for the bank, how do you see it? Is it working? How would you? UBA's strategy has been anchored on unparalleled service. I just addressed 2 or 3 things that their strategy is anchored on. The first one is on parallel service for their customers. Right. Using technology, and I've done a lot of transformation processes to make sure the service delivery in the bank is excellent across all the geographies. Okay. The other thing that as I mentioned before, I told you that they're in several African regions. Yes. The other thing also is that they have now aggressively following of the process of deepening the market share in all these countries where UBA is present. I'm aware that in the recent time they have done some leadership changes, especially for the subsidiaries in the East Africa, to ensure that they gain more from those markets. UBA, remember, have presence in US, they have presence in UK, and have presence in France. The objective of that is that they're using all those 3 locations to promote intra-African trade. Okay. And enhance trade flows between Africa and the world. And that has helped them, right. Especially with the 20 African countries where they have locations. Okay, and that means if we look at the African Continental Free Trade Agreement, they are well positioned now to tap into that. They're already there. And the UBA, among Nigerian banks, have been a forerunner to go into these countries. You wouldn't even know that UBA is in Mozambique. Right. Then Gabon, Mozambique, Congo DR, Congo Brazzaville. Mention the country. They are there. Mali, they are there. Chad, they are there. Burkina Faso, they are there. So they are forerunner for the banks in Nigeria to these countries. And so they are positioned as intra-African trade grows, especially with the Continental African Trade Area Agreement. Yes. UBA is positioned to tap into
that.
them.
Okay, I want to ask, and I think I asked you this when we talked about Zenith. You mentioned the technology being behind much of the growth as far as profits are concerned. Again, the reduction that we saw in ATM fees, transfer fees, and so on. 2019 was good, but now I'm sure we'll be back again in a month's time to look at 2020.
Even the Q1, very soon, the quarter one results will soon come out. By the end of, beginning of April, the quarter one results will come out. We will start seeing the impact of the reduced fees and commissions for the banks. But you see, a lot of banks have been pushing, especially for UBA. UBA has been pushing on retail payments and retail. Even they have an ED, executive director, that is driving retails and payments to show you the importance of that segment. And that segment has been driving the electronic banking income, pushing that franchise all over Nigeria and all over Africa. I do believe that even though the fees have been reduced by Central Bank of Nigeria, the volumes will compensate as they expand their franchise all over Africa.
Okay, fine. We've got less than a minute. On the LDR ratio, I know the loan book, it's growing. NPLs, they've managed them very well. But are you concerned going into 2020 that might increase?
I'm concerned. I'm really concerned because of the fact that if you have a net growth in loan book of almost about 400 billion over a period of time, it's massive. Your monitoring processes must be superior, first class, and then you must make sure you stay close to the customers to make sure that they make the repayments in line with the loan agreements.
Chika Mbonu, Arise Business Analyst, we thank you very much for joining us to look at UBA's 2019 financial performance, which was quite impressive, and giving an outlook as to how you see things with NPLs, electronic banking, and so on. Thank you so much, sir.